Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week, I'm lucky enough to present to you an interview that I did with actress, writer, comedian, all around talented person, Lisa Linke. You may know her on your TV from her recent stint on Bless This Mess, or you might have seen her turn up on Teachers, or you could be following her on Instagram for her weekly improv, or any number of things that she does. I was really excited to get to talk to her, and we ended up having the chat just after the George Floyd protests had really begun. So there was no way to avoid talking about these issues. And even though I held the interview for a little bit, it's just as relevant now. And if you need to go shake your timeline up, I'm asking you to do it. I hope you enjoy this interview and everything we talk about. And I hope you're going out and having hard conversations with your friends about more than just television. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Les.
Thanks so much for making time to do this today. I really appreciate it. Bless This Mess ended up being a surprise show that caught me off guard. I really enjoy. I don't know why I was surprised. I love Dak Shepard and Lake Bell. I grew up in a middle of nowhere.
I mean, it makes sense. It's about farmers in Nebraska, right?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly who you
would like it.
Yeah, and it ended up being one of the rare shows that I can watch alongside. It's one of the rare sitcoms my dad and I can completely agree on. And so, Bless This Mess ended up being this where like he looked over and went, "Oh man, have you seen that?" I'm like, have you seen that? Okay, cool. Yes, we'll watch that. So and as soon as I saw you, I was like, oh yes, that's why I know her. Can you talk a little bit about getting cast on that show? The differences in what you get to do as a performer. I know there's a way to make TV shows, but all TV shows have a little bit different tone on set. But between your improv work and your work on Bless This Mess or AJ and the Queen or recurring on Teachers, I've talked to a few of the Katydids. Can you talk a little bit about where you get to play and where you have to really hew to the script?
Yeah. So one of the brilliant writers on the show, Chelsea Devantez, created the episode that I first appeared in season 1. Where all of the women in Bucksnort are scrapbooking. And I auditioned for the role of Linda that they cast Rose Abdu in, but then they contacted my reps and said, we have this other character in mind for Lisa. She's a quiet talker. And listen, Chelsea is so smart and so funny, and anything she ever asks me to do, I will immediately say yes. And then, of course, to be involved in that show was just a thrill. So my first day on set was filming that scrapbooking scene from season 1, and I was with Lennon Parham and Lake Bell and Pam Grier and Nancy Lenahan and Rose Abdu, and it was written by Chelsea and it was directed by Molly McGlynn, who is a brilliant director, and she's directed a bunch of the episodes of Bless This Mess. Like, I just felt like I was in lady comedy heaven. I texted my Chicago friends that day and said, you guys cannot believe the joy that I'm experiencing today. It was just truly a wonderful experience. So if that had been the end of my experience on Bless This Mess, I would have walked away delighted. But the fact that they wanted to bring Clara back just made me so happy. So that was kind of me being brought onto the show. And then that set is really, really fun. Usually we try to get as scripted and then do a fun run. And there are just so many wonderful improvisers on that set, So trying to make somebody laugh, like whenever I made Dak Shepard laugh, I felt like such a sense of pride, or Jim O'Hare, or, it's just chock full of so many amazing people that I have loved watching as I, have studied and just been an audience participant. So to be able to perform and play with them is just a delight.
And you also use Instagram for something that I don't think I've ever quite seen before. I don't think I've ever gotten to say that to anybody. But the Suggestion Sunday show is such a neat idea. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired that or what made it click that, hey, I think this would work here?
Yeah, so I just celebrated my 3-year anniversary of doing it. And It's just to recap, it's a weekly live improvised show.
That's like 900 in Instagram years, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I was on a writing weekend by myself trying to outline a script. And it was like Sunday, it was noon, and Instagram had just started live. So it was a new feature, and I was out in Palm Springs, and I was just kind of like, I need to shake my brain up. And so I just went live, and I thought, I was like, give me some suggestions. I'll improvise some characters, and that'll kind of get me back into the mode of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so much fun that I was like, I want to do this every week. Now, listen, 3 years later, sometimes it's a grind. Sometimes I have to take weeks off. But yesterday was a really difficult week, but about 10 people showed up, and I said, let's either just sit here in silence, or like I can support however we want. And some people were like, I just want to laugh for a little bit. And I was like, okay, then I'm your girl, and let's do some 60-second characters. And I found some fun characters that I love out of there that I would love to do something with at some point. So it's useful for me. I do feel like I'm being a little bit of an act of service to people. And also, especially right now during, COVID, where we're just trying to stay inside, it's nice to be able to go to an improv show without having to get off your couch or get out of your pajamas, And
Yeah.
even when we're not trying to stay inside, it's nice to go to an improv show without having to get off your couch or get out of your pajamas.
I'll be real.
So,
Even after life returns to normal, I hope some of these virtual options remain because they really are handy.
yeah.
I want to see people, but also I have friends who, even when COVID wasn't happening, they really couldn't go downtown for things, And this has been wonderful for them.
It's asking a lot to have somebody drive downtown, look or pay for parking, pay a ticket price, sit and watch two other improv teams, before you come on, and then to tell them it was great, and I fully support that as well, because listen, that's how I came up. But I'm not going to ask my friends to do that anymore. So I'm offering something that's free and hopefully is fun and useful. And, you get what you pay for. Some days it's great, and some days, not so great, but it's free. What can I say?
And it lets you be topical. I mean, there's times where we watch shows that air and you think, oh my God, that's so prescient. And they filmed it a year ago. And then there's times where you watch shows and think, y'all did not mean this to release this week. No one would ever write that episode this week. And so I imagine that the Suggestion Sunday show probably gives an opportunity as a comedian to do the helpful thing that comedy does during times like this for me. I mean, last night I had to take a moment of really picking what my wife and I were going to sit and watch together at the very end of our day. And it was a very hard discussion of like, I have to put this down. I have to put the stress down somehow.
Yes. Les, you're totally right. And I come from Chicago. I come from Second City. I taught satire writing at Second City, and then when I was out here in Los Angeles online for some years. So I am rooted in satire. Really, that's my ideal space to be. So it is a great place for me to kind of do that on the fly, and I'm comfortable with it and execute it, I would say, fairly accurately. It's a difficult genre to execute, but it is easy and nice to kind of be able to just put no pressure on a 60-second character based off a suggestion and just kind of say what's on my mind and kind of explore it a little bit through improv.
When it comes to the mechanics of satire, has that changed for you in the last 4 years? I'm thinking of Patton Oswalt's joke from his recent bit about, how it's odd to make fun of if somebody's just doing your joke in real life. Has that been any different for you?
No, the mechanics of, especially you're talking to a teacher of satire, so somebody else's answer.
No, that's exactly what I wanted to ask you. Yeah.
The mechanics of satire are exactly the same. I think what the last 4 years have really highlighted is the difficulty in using comedic satire, right, when what's happening in front of you is buffoonery. So it's hard to make a metaphorical example of a leader who's a buffoon, who's bungling a response, say, to a worldwide pandemic, when what you're living in is a country, that's proclaimed to be the greatest country in the world, that has completely bungled a response to a worldwide pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to actually be very more strategic and specific in your satire for it to make sense and for it to truly be satire. Otherwise, people don't understand. Otherwise, it's just an imitation or a parody, and that isn't always satire. It can be, but not always. Does that make sense?
Yeah. If you do it wrong, it lands like when you watch satire go wrong in text or something, when you watch sarcasm go wrong in text, and they're like, nope, that joke just didn't hit right.
Bigotry or racism. Yeah, it can be.
Yeah,
really
it can go very
difficult.
wrong, very, very fast.
So, I think for me, what is easier, because we have this, as John Mulaney says, horse in a hospital. Like, there's a horse in a hospital. That's my favorite bit that he does. There's this thing that seems very out of place. So the comment on the thing that seems out of place isn't going to strike at it. For me, it seems more true to satire at this moment to strike at the things that are supporting this thing that's out of place. So, for me, Trump is much less of a target than, say, Mitch McConnell or the GOP senators who are kind of staying silent about his absolutely ineffectual and total utter failure response to COVID and to what's happening in the country right now. So for me, it's easier to highlight my satire by pointing at the people who are kind of keeping this power structure versus who have the power in this instance.
Yeah. I literally just watched a documentary on McGovern, and so all my references are mixed up in my head.
Yeah.
But it's I'd rather make fun of Creep than make fun of Nixon.
So eerily similar.
It really helped, honestly. It helped me to put what's happening into a 60s revolutionary frame and understand it as a possible opportunity or inflection point. And it really did help. I know you've been involved in the Women's March for a while, and I know then that you understand the power of protest. Can you talk a little bit about your involvement in that and your actual involvement in that? I mean, everybody feels it on the couch or feels it in their heart and thinks, I should be part of this. Can you talk a little bit about how you moved through those steps to activism?
Yes. So I was very fortunate to be raised in a house where I was shown by example and told that voting is not only my right, but a privilege and a duty. And I was always taken with my parents when they went to vote. I was always, I had the privilege of being in a household where parents had the time and the privilege to go vote. Because not everybody can get off work, not everybody has a car, and voter suppression is real. So I benefited from that greatly. And I really that's in my bones. And on top of it, I'm just kind of a person who has a hot button for justice. So obviously I walked in the first Women's March here, and had been in other rallies attended. When I was asked to speak at the Get Out the Vote campaign in Sacramento for the Women's March, I was overjoyed. And to be speaking on that list with people was incredible. People that I admire, and to listen to them. And it was recently after Stephon Clark had been shot in Sacramento, so and gunned down by the police. So it was really heartbreaking to hear from his grandmother, to hear from other people. And so really my focus there, I just wanted to talk to white people of privilege who don't invest in voting and don't invest in local voting too. And just to kind of speak my mind, which is that voting is a compassionate act, and that it is not just about what's good for me, but it really can better our community, our state, our nation, our world when we are invested in the act of voting. And so I was just thrilled to be a part of that. And then on my own, I have been working over the last couple years to really help deconstruct my inherited biases and growing up in a white supremacist nation, which a lot of people are very uncomfortable with. And I read White Fragility recently. I'm covering it on our podcast in a couple of weeks on Go Help Yourself.
Yeah, on Go Help Yourself.
And just really trying to better understand the systemic oppression that exists. And knowing that has really changed my perspective. So I am an ardent and advocate for protest. I have boycotted the NFL for about a decade. Starting off, I couldn't stand the way they were treating their players union with the CTE injuries, and then came the domestic violence, and then came Colin Kaepernick. So I was glad to be an official boycott of that organization for many years before the bullshit that they pulled with Colin Kaepernick. And I'm very angry and was very disappointed in the reaction, because I don't agree with people, but I will definitely protect their right to voice their opinion. And I just that I'm getting derailed. But anyway, no. I think I've always felt a sense of connection to that as part of our as a citizen. We have privileges and rights, but we also have responsibilities, and white people are woefully unaware of how we participate in systemic oppression and keep it the norm.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Go Help Yourself podcast. I mean, anybody who's ever walked into a self-help section of any bookstore knows that there's a million variants on every one of those books, and so literally anything that reviews them in a listenable fashion is fantastic.
It's true. The market is like 11 to 13 billion, and it covers Excel for Dummies all the way up to The Secret. So like literally anything that fits in there is considered self-help. And in the broader scale of the industry, a person who offers personal physical training is considered self-help. When I wouldn't actually deem it that.
Yeah.
Because they could be a horrible person saying terrible things to your psyche. You know what I mean? So
but your biceps
really
look great.
Yeah. It's kind of wild. Yeah. Hey, listen, you are building muscle, but you're a piece of shit.
Right. I mean, there's a fair number of those.
How is that self-help?
Right?
I don't know.
One last question that really kind of wrapping that up. When you're on a Sunday and you're angry, that can't possibly lead into subtle or nuanced comedy, I wouldn't think. What do you do to change your state to get ready for something like #Suggestion Sunday Show?
That's a great question. I think a younger me would just kind of push it aside and gut through it. But I think the current me is really aware that part of what is my comedy and my flavor, my brand, is that I get pissed at what's happening and I like to comment on it. And I'm well read. I have a subscription to the LA Times. I was just reading it before I hopped on the call with you, and it's not pleasant to read the paper.
No,
but I do it. And I know what the fuck is happening in my world. And I have varied sources, and I really trusted sources, I should say. And I have worked hard to diversify my social media feed. And I'm working hard. Am I perfect? Hell no. I was inculcated into this country, this culture that where we have to have a Black Lives Matter movement. So, I'm at least aware that I'm part of the problem and actively trying to change that. On the other side, I've been a performer for 20 years, plus probably since I came out of the womb. So there is a switch in me that I can kind of turn on. And on days when it's too difficult, I know it, and I can say I can't do it today. But for the most part, improv is such a beautiful art form. It's really about being of service to the other person. And so in my Suggestion Sunday show, the other person is the audience. And so I'm of service to them. So for me to be able to show up for 15, 20 minutes to be of service of anybody who's there, I can do that. I can do that easily.
Yeah. From that mindset, I could see where, I can easily shift that weight. Of course, I'm that mom move of, I can't get up off the couch to fix me a dinner, but are you hungry? Because I'll fix you food.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Am I of service to you? I can move that.
I do find it healing. I do find that through making people laugh, which is my drug of choice, that I feel better. I feel better when people say, that was great. I feel better. Thank you so much.
Well,
great. I can do that.
I was excited to get to talk to you today, mostly because your career is varied across making people laugh and helping people's hearts and standing up for people. And all of that is happening right now. I mean, we've all got to be out there for our friends and loved ones. And we've all got to take a moment to look at some nasty, hard shit that we grew up believing. And then we've all got to also be able to care for ourselves and put it down and laugh and be able to get up tomorrow and do it again.
Yeah. This isn't going to be done in a weekend or a week.
No, I hope to God this has to keep going.
Yeah, that we need has to be sustained, and it's tough. And I am just last night I was talking with a lot of my improv friends, and I was saying, like, man, what a time to be alive in our country's history. Like in 10, 20, 30 years, when people are asking about this time, we get to say, yeah, listen, I was in it in the middle of a pandemic when, people were scared and angry and dying. And then this, spate of police sanctioned murders happened, like people were frightened and angry and rent was due. And they started protesting because they hadn't been like, to be alive in this time is truly a blessing. And the gift is to be able to participate in it. Now, let me tell you, on the other hand, I was like, but also couldn't I have been born in like 100 years? Like, couldn't I have just skipped past all this? But I didn't, and I'm here. And I think that it feels better to take action, and the white silence is deafening. And so I don't ever want to be having to explain to somebody in, 30, 40, 50 years, God willing, that I did nothing. At the very least, my God, post it on your social media.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah.
2 seconds.
Yeah, if you don't understand why we need to say Black Lives Matter, yes, human life is valuable, but we don't need to say all lives matter right now. Shut the fuck up. If you don't understand why Black Lives Matter is a thing right now, you're not reading the news.
Yeah, and listen, it is hard. I think I loved reading White Fragility, and I can't recommend it enough to people.
Yes, that's a great book.
I've been told that for Black, Indigenous, and people of color, it's also helpful for them to understand why white people are so fucking dense about this. But like, it really frames up that how racism has been set up as a dichotomy. You are either racist and morally bad, or you are a good person.
Yeah.
And within that construct, nobody can ever acknowledge that they have done something that is supporting white supremacy.
No, it's
So
how Obama could get elected, and we could all just decide racism ended, because it's a light switch. I'm either a horrible person or not.
That's right. And so reading that really kind of like broke open for me the ability to say, oh yeah, and Glennon Doyle says it in her book Untamed, which we're also covering, like, you may not be poisoning the air, but if you're walking around in a city that has poison air, you have poison in your lungs, right? Like, I have internalized misogyny. I have internalized racism. I have all of this stuff. Well, not internalized, but I have racist beliefs that because of the culture that I was raised in, because there was not an accurate representation in media and culture, and it's just so baked in and cooked in that I really wish for people the gift to be able to kind of see how it's been limiting their lives.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me in the last couple of years, was starting to really understand how this system that benefits me hurts me. And I think that for a lot of people, that is a really great first bit of understanding to start with, that if you're playing to macho stereotypes, you're limiting what you get to do. I don't get to listen to some music I get to listen to because my friends in junior high would have laughed at me.
That's right.
And,
we just covered For the Love of Men by Liz Plank. Did you read that book?
I've not read that one.
I think you would love it. It's fucking great. It tackles toxic masculinity, which is also baked into, white supremacy. And I cut you off. I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
it's to finish saying.
Trevor Noah's recent 20-minute statement on his social media about people just don't seem to understand how dominoes fall. I don't, like how is everybody seem, if you think all these things are just disconnected events, well, let me tell you they are not. And none of this suddenly got bad. This was bad for Black people a week ago. It just got visible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have friends who I've had to have some tough conversations over the past couple of days, that they have said, I don't mind protests, but I don't understand the looting, and the looting is not okay.
Yeah.
And I said, well,
I've had that discussion.
Listen, I'm not going to tell a group of people who've been oppressed for 4 centuries how to protest. Mm-hmm. Because as we've seen, however they protest, they get ignored, they get fired, they get killed. So I'm not going to tell them.
The knee didn't work, names on a shirt didn't work. Yeah.
That's right. So I think that's really hard, but I think that's the uncomfortable space that we need to sit in as white people, is that your protest is making me uncomfortable. And, parsing it out even further, that especially here in LA, like looting and protesting is totally separate, Well,
and realizing that I'm in an uncomfortable space where my Black friends live. Like this is uncomfortable, but not new for them. It's just new for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so part of white supremacy is getting right back to that normal state of like getting back to what it was before. And I think we just have to be uncomfortable for a while and make mistakes, trying to be better allies and doing our best. And we're going to fuck up, and that's okay. And, but we have to do better. We just have to.
And it's not a light switch. You don't lose all your friends because you're uncomfortable for a minute. Be uncomfortable. It's totally okay.
No.
Friends will still be here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking to me about all this today.
Gosh, I really enjoyed this conversation. And thank you for letting it be really current and really open and frank.
Honestly, I don't think I could have held my food down if I had been as disingenuous as to not discuss this today. Like, that'd have been a long 20 minutes of avoiding this elephant in the room.
Felt like the worst betrayal.
Oh, yeah.
The world is burning, but less.
Like, haha, teachers was the best. Yeah, it's just going to be awkward. Yeah. No, thank you for also letting it be. This is a good conversation to have, I feel. Thank you so much. TV Dudes is an independently run podcast out of Austin, Texas. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/TVDudes.
You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TV Dudes. All the music for our show is done by our friend and original TV Dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith.
To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com. I'm Randy Lander.
I'm Les Weiler.
And I'm Kyle Scott.
Thanks for listening.